Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about Memento design pattern. It belongs to the category of behavioral design patterns. It is used where you have multiple states in your program and you want to implement undo, redo, restore, etc. kind of functionalities. It helps in following the single responsibility principle by delegating the responsibility of maintaining the state to another class. It also helps in following the encapsulation principle, since even after applying this design principle, the internal state of primary class is only visible to itself. It is not visible to other classes that we use to implement the Memento design pattern. Now, some of the examples of this design pattern are saving in progress, database rollbacks, undo, redo kind of functionalities in the text editor, etc. Now coming to the components of Memento design patterns. The first component is called the originator. So it is the object whose state needs to be saved and restored. For example, if we have a text editor, then the text editor will be the originator. Its state needs to be saved. The originator, it creates memento objects to store the snapshot of its internal state, and it has methods to retrieve and restore these states as needed. So memento objects, they are created by the originator design pattern. For example, the text editor state, which is the content in the text editor, it can be saved using a memento, and those memento objects, they are created by this state which represent the snapshot of the current text content. And the originator class, it has a functionality to create those objects as well as to restore its current state, which in our example is the content in the text editor, from those memento objects. For example, in the text editor, the originator can be a document object, right? So the document, it can have the text content as its state. The memento object which will hold the text content will be created by this originator, which is the document, and the document will also have the functionality to restore its state, which is the content, using those memento objects. Now the second part is the memento. The memento, it serves as a snapshot that stores the originator state at a specific moment. It is a typically immutable and does not allow modification once it is created, therefore ensuring that the state is preserved exactly as needed. The memento exposes methods for the originator to read the state, but not for the caretaker or client to alter it. Okay, so the memento are basically read-only objects that store the state. They allow the originator to read their state, but they do not allow other client library, client code, or the caretaker class to read their content. And once they are created, they cannot be modified. Now the last part of the memento design pattern is the caretaker. The caretaker manages the memento objects, keeping track of the history for performing operations like undo, redo, etc. So basically, caretaker stores a list of memento objects, and each of these memento objects stores different state. So the caretaker will be able to perform the undo, redo, etc. functionality by switching between these different state objects, which are the memento objects. The caretaker, it asks the originator to create a memento or restore its state from a memento. It does not directly manipulate the content inside the memento. So the caretaker does not directly read the state of the memento or manipulate the state of the memento. Also, the state of a memento is read only. These mementos, they are created by the caretaker, and these mementos, they are also used by the caretaker to restore their state. And this is done by the caretaker through the originator class. The originator class is the one which is creating the memento and using to restore the state, because the caretaker is calling those functionalities or the methods on the originator class. This separation protects encapsulation, so changes in the state are only performed through the originator through memento objects. Now coming to the summary table, The originator is the one that maintains the state. It creates and restores mementos. The memento, they store the originator state at a particular moment. Basically, they are state snapshots. Finally, the caretaker. The caretaker manages, saves, and restores mementos, and it preserves the history. Now, coming to the code. Let's implement the memento design pattern. So, firstly, we will be needing the memento, and the memento will be storing the state of the originator. Now, the originator is the main class, and let's take an example in which we have a text editor and we want to implement the undo and redo functionality in the text editor. Okay, so the text editor should have undo and redo functionality. So how are we going to do this? So the text editor, it should have method to read its state. So let's just call it print content, and it will simply print the content on the text editor. So the text editor, it should have some content. Okay. Now there should be a method that will allow the text editor to restore its state from a memento. So let's just call it restore content. Okay, and it will be taking a memento. So that will be of type memento. And what it will do is that basically it will state the current state, which is the self dot content equals to basically memento dot get content. Okay. Now it should also have the functionality to save the content. So this will do nothing except for returning a memento object that will store the state of the editor at that particular point of time. So basically it will return a memento type of object, and that will have the content of the text editor. Okay. Now coming to the memento class itself. The memento class, it is going to store the content of the text editor, right? So the memento class should take the content and it will simply store the content, and you can have a method which is called get content, and it will simply return the content. Okay. Now for simplicity, we can keep all the classes in a single file for now, and we can call it just memento, right? The file name can be just memento. Now I'm pulling the originator, which is the text editor, to the memento class itself. Okay. So now the memento, which stores the read-only state, that is the content, or to be precise, we can call it text content. And it also has a method that exposes the content, right, on the memento. And this class is going to be a read-only class. So in Python, we can use something called as data classes to implement this thing. So from data classes, import data class. And we do not, a Pythonic way is not to have methods to get some attributes. We can simply access the attributes through the dot notation. But in languages like Java, we usually have the concept of getters and setters. The Pythonic way is to simply access the data using the dot notation, right? So we can turn this into a data class, and the data class can store text content, which is going to be a string, and we do not really need this thing. We can simply call the text content using the dot notation. And one more thing that we can do is set frozen to true, meaning once the memento is created, its content, its attributes cannot be set later on. That means it is read only. Now in the text editor, we have the content in the state of the text editor, right? The print content will simply print the content of the text editor, and the restore content, it will take a memento, right? And from the memento, it will restore its current state. So it will set the self.content to the state of the memento. And from the memento, you can get the content by using that dot notation by calling memento dot text content. Now coming to the saving content part, the saving content part, it should simply create a memento object, and we can do it by using this memento class. Simply we will pass the content within this class, and that will create a new memento class. Okay, so the text editor, now it has two methods that restores and saves the content, and both of them makes use of the memento object. Now the memento objects, they are managed by another class which is called the caretaker class. Now what it will do is that simply it will store all of the history of these mementos in a Python list, right? So now we are storing the history using a Python list, and this list will have all the mementos pushed to it whenever we want to save the memento, right? So the caretaker, it should have a functionality of save, and what the save functionality will do is that it will take the originator, which is the text editor, this text editor is the originator, and what it will do is that whenever we want to save the history, or we want to save the current state for the text editor, we will simply call text editor dot save content, and what it will do is that it will give us the current snapshot, right? And what we will do is that we will push the current snapshot to the history. So we will do simply append to the history. Now what more functionality the caretaker is going to provide? So our text editor should have the functionality of saving the current state, as well as the functionality to undo to the last stage, right? So it will also have one more method, that is undo, and it will again take the self editor, text editor, I mean self and text editor. Okay, so what we are going to do now is that we are going to get the memento, which we will pass to the text editor to restore its state to the last point in the history, because that is what essentially the undo does. Undo restores the state to the last saved history. Okay, so firstly we are going to check if there is something in the history or not. Only if we have something in the history, that means the history is non-empty, then we are going to get the last stage. So if there is nothing in the history, then what is going to happen? Then simply we will not be able to do undo, right? Because there is nothing in it. So in this case, we are going to do nothing but just return. Otherwise, what we are going to do is that we are going to get the last item in the history. So self.history.pop, simply it will get the last item and remove it from the history. And this is the last snapshot, and we are going to restore from this snapshot. So we are going to invoke the method of restores content by providing it this last snapshot memento, right? So this is what it is going to do. Now let's just use this code for having our undo functionality. But one more thing that we are going to do is that basically the text editor, it has the functionality to print the content so that we can see what its content is. It has the functionality to restore and save the content which we want. But essentially there is no functionality that alters the state of this text editor, right? So we want to be able to change the state of the text editor, right? Because otherwise that undo functionality will make no sense for something that does not have changing state. So now let's create a new method which is called write content, and what basically it does is that it will take the content and it will just append it to the content of our text editor. So self.content plus equals to the new content, right? So this is what it is doing. Okay, now let's just use this code. So we are going to have our text editor, which is going to be an instance of the text editor, and we are also going to have our caretaker. Okay, so the text editor, we are going to write hello world is my first. Let me remove this dialog box. First line will save this. Okay, so caretaker dot save. I'm calling the save method and then passing the text editor. Okay, now let's just write something more. Hello Python is my second line, will not save this. Okay, so and I'm not saving. And now one more thing that I will do is this time I will say hello Memento is my third line, this will be saved, right? And I'm saving this, and I'm going to write one more thing, and this time what I'm doing is I will say this is my last line but not getting saved, right? Now finally let's print the content. Now as you can assume that it will have all of these contents, because now right now we are not doing undo, we are simply doing the write operation one after another. So we are simply doing the write operation one after another, therefore it should have all of these lines. And so that it is easy for us to view, I will also add the new line character in each of these strings so that they are printed on the new lines. Okay, let's just run this code, Python memento and then memento.py. So let me see what the issue is. So actually the print content, it returns this thing, but I want it to be printed on the console. Okay, now let's run this. So hello world is my first line. Will save this, will not save this, will not be saved, and this is last line but not saved. Okay, so this thing is getting printed. Now suppose if before printing this content I do the undo operation. So this will be caretaker.undo, and then it will take the text editor. Okay, so as you can see that since I did undo, this line is gone because now I am to my last saving point, which is this one, right? So everything till this should be available. Hello, this is my first line, will save this. This is my second line, will not save this. This is my third line, will not save. This will be saved. So I am back to this point, which is my last saving point. If I undo once again, okay, so if I do undo once again, then what should happen is should get to the second last saving point, right? This thing, right after doing this thing, I did not save this, so I'm assuming this will be gone. Okay, so now I'm to my first line where I made the second last save. So I'm back to this point. And if I'm going to do undo once again, then it does, I should firstly do undo once again, then I should run the file. It does nothing. Why? Because this is my last saving point, and after this the caretaker has history empty, so that is why it is doing nothing. So one more thing which we can do is suppose we have uh, 5 different, suppose we are calling it multiple times more than what it can do. So if we want, we can also have the undo operation tell us whether the operation was successful or not. So it can return a boolean, and if there is nothing in history, then return false and return true, right? And whenever you will be doing the undo operation, you can also check if this is successful or not. You can do this thing, and if this was successful, then you can say undo was, if this is not successful, then we should print and say nothing to perform undo, right? And this should be done for everyone so that we have an idea whether the undo was successful or not. So nothing to perform undo, and once again nothing to perform undo. This is coming from these different operations when we try to do undo, but there was nothing to perform the undo, and then finally the content is getting printed. Okay, so this was it. We were able to implement the undo functionality using the Memento design pattern. So the 3 components of the Memento design pattern were the Memento itself, which is the read-only snapshot of the state of the originator. Here the originator was the text editor itself. The originator should have the functionality to restore its state and save its state using Memento. And the caretaker, it is basically going to store the history, which will have all the mementos, and it will have the save functionality that will simply ask the originator to provide a state that will be saved in the history of the caretaker. And the undo operation or any other operation, it should be able to get the should be able to restore the history of the originator to whatever the point we want. Okay, so this was it. Now, there is one demerit of design pattern, and that is it will not be a wise choice to use this in situation where the state is large and frequent saves needs to be made. Because since we will be doing that, it will consume lot of memory, and that will be an issue for us. So if suppose this memento class, it is really big, it stores large data, and also if the save operation is performed way too frequently, then this history list, it will be very bigger, and it will consume a lot of memory, so that will be an issue for us. Otherwise, it is a great pattern, and it is very useful in situations where you want to perform the undo, redo, and restoring to a certain point kind of functionalities. And this is the end for this tutorial now.